It's Divas That Care Radio. Stories, strategies, and ideas to inspire positive change. Welcome to Divas That Care, a network of women committed to making our world a better place for everyone. This is a global movement for women, by women, engaged in a collaborative effort to create a better world for future generations. To find out more about the movement, visit divasthatcare.com after the show. Right now, though, stay tuned for another jolt of inspiration.
Magical day to all. Welcome to Divas That Care Network. I am Joyce Benning, and I will be your host for this magical, robust lifestyle show. I would first like to thank each one of you listeners that are listening to this podcast on the numerous different platforms. I am so very grateful and thankful for each and every one of you. And you are all in for one magical show today, as I have with me my amazing returning diva, Gia-RaquelGia-Raquel. And her and I are going to chat about trust from the inside out. Oh, wow, how true this is. And with that, Gia, would you please introduce yourself to our listeners today?
Thank you, Joyce. It's so wonderful to be back with you, sharing space in this very special month on this very special day. So I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you. My name is Gia-RaquelGia-Raquel, owner of Areas Above Yoga, and I am a Reiki master, a twice certified yoga instructor, and intuitive healer of animals and humans alike. So I love our chats and hope that we bring a little bit of insight to anyone who takes the time to listen.
Oh, yes. And the ones that take the time to listen, how much it will make their day even more magical yet, because everything you're doing is truly a diva working to make the world a better place for the animals and for the humans. So I love it. So with that, how would you like to start to share with our listeners today about trust from the inside out?
So the kind of tongue-in-cheek theme that I wanted to kind of touch on is the elephant in the room is the fact that it's Friday the 13th. And it just so happened that we wound up having our conversation today. And I always believe in, there are no such things as coincidences, right? So, I wanted to touch briefly on that because it's got this kind of negative connotation to it, right? Friday, there's no 13th floor in a lot of buildings, right? Like Friday the 13th has, I don't remember which, I'm not a horror movie girl, obviously, but which horror movie it was there. I believe that was the title of them. And so if you aren't super familiar with it, it's actually the number 13 is a very powerful feminine energy number. There's a full moon this weekend. And, I just think that, Mercury's retrograde, Mars just went retrograde. There's so much movement with the planets. And I think another planet just went direct this week as well. So, we're always in flux, I think is the main thing. And Friday the 13th or the 13th in general, like I said, it's a feminine and empowering number. It's our number. So I want to take it back. I want to use our platform collectively, and I want to take the number 13 back for the ladies. And I really think our feminine energy. You can talk about the whole movement of Pluto into Aquarius is a huge thing that has just gone on. That's a 20-year transition, astrologically speaking. And so, there's all of the quote unquote age of Aquarius stuff that you can kind of go into. I don't want to go too much into that, but I do want to talk about, the transferring over to the feminine energy, to the receptive energy. We've been talking for a couple months now about your intuition, tapping into it, tuning into it, trusting it. And I think a couple times when we spoke, the natural evolution of tuning into your intuition has become a conversation of trust. And I think that the divine feminine or the receptive nature starting to move collectively as a consciousness, as a group dynamic from more of a masculine driven culture to more of a receptive feminine culture. And I don't know how we do that. I think it's going to be a paint by numbers kind of a situation. But I do think that trusting ourselves as women is going to be a very big part of that.
Oh, how true that is. And something that just comes to my mind when you say about feminine power and feminine energy and trusting that innerness inside of you, I think of my mare. She is so she's so powerful in her feminine energy. She's not afraid to show it. She is who she is, and she is just beautiful from the inside out. And she shows me her powerful energy all the time, because a lot of times in the evening my Minka girl and I are in her stall, and I'm going, this is phenomenal, three feminine energies all coming together, and it just gives you an uplift. You can just feel it. It's just beautiful. So yeah, the animals, I think, are a good for me, the animals are a great way to learn how to trust that energy, that good, beautiful feminine energy on the inside, because just like her and like my Minka girl, they show it so well. They're not scared to show their feminine energy.
No, no. And I think that it's so inherent. I mean, we have the
Mhm.
power to create,
Yes.
right? We create life. We don't do it all by ourselves. We're not gonna take everything away from the gentleman, right? We
Right.
can't do it all by ourselves, but that is a massive gift
Mhm.
that we have as females of all species. That is a massive gift that we have. We have the power to create. And one of the things that's, it is December. It's December the 13th. With the holidays, and this theme that I've just been going off of in my mind has been create versus consume. It is the time of consumption, right? The holidays, you're always buying things. And for me, I've just said, even if that has just been so much a theme for me, is just create. So I just had my father over for lunch, and I right before this actually, and I decided that instead of going out to lunch, which is what we usually do, that I was going to make food and I was going to bake and I was going to send him home with sweet potato brownies, which are an amazing thing, by the way.
Mhm.
Um, delicious. But I said, you know what? I'm going to create. And it made our afternoon together so much better, so much, and not to say that the food out wouldn't have been lovely or we wouldn't have had a wonderful time, but I'm going on this aspect of, and again, trusting in my intuition and in my wisdom of not doing what we usually do, what we always do, and saying, you know what, this is, and it's so funny because he left it right, exactly the right time. The muffins came out at the right time. The brownies were done, and it was just, it flowed so nicely. And I
Mhm.
think it was because I, in my feminine energy, changed the course of the direction and the trajectory. And I said, I don't want to do what I said we were going to do. We had this podcast come up and I knew we were going to be talking, and my initial plan said, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to do this. And it was really simple and beautiful and wonderful just in what it was. But I created a space. I created a meal. I made these things occur, as opposed to going out, and not like I didn't go shopping and buy all the things to make it, right? But I didn't go out and, sit at a restaurant and all of that. And so again, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of that, but I think that even when you're thinking about your holiday gifts, even when you're thinking about all the things that you have to do, we just go out and buy it. Or goodness gracious, look at Amazon Day. All of this just button click, button click, button click. And I try to make an effort to shop very local, and buy small and do all those things. But that has been such a theme for me, is what if we just made a note of that in our minds? What if we just decided to, instead of take, which again is kind of a masculine energy, right? Like, we conquered the world one way, right? And it was generally a war-based, very male energy. But what if we went from the consume, from the take, to the create, to the give energy, to the share energy, to the invite in energy? And I just think that that would make, our Mercury retrograde holiday season all that much more, maybe not more, but less egregious, and more settled, more down to earth, more calming, more centering for our nervous system.
Oh, oh, I so hear what you're saying, and I just love it, because to me, you're creating from the heart. Look how it made you feel on the inside to provide a meal that you had made for your dad. And I am sure it meant so much to him. It meant so much spending time with him, but yet for you to come from your heart and take the time to create this meal for him. It's just beautiful because to me, it's all about going into your heart and seeing what you can create. What is your heart saying? You could have ignored that little voice that said, let's make a meal today rather and stay in and uh, have dinner or lunch together with my dad at my house. You could have ignored that thought because I'm sure at the moment it was a passing thought. And as you went in on it more, it was like, yeah, I like this idea. And like you said, how it flowed. When you follow your heart, it just seems things just flow so much easier. And to me, it relaxes me so much more. The stress isn't there when you're following from the heart. Oh, that is something that just came to my mind. I love that. That was just beautiful.
Yeah, no, and I think you are spot on. And like I said, things just all the timing just worked out. I'm not gonna say I'm in the kitchen, I'm like making all the things and baking and cooking at the same time. So I'm not gonna it wasn't stressful. I enjoyed doing it. But the fact that literally, I think within 2 minutes of me having to switch to start getting ready to have our conversation, the muffins came out of the oven and I said, "Oh, Dad, take a little protein muffin with you on the road." And I hope you enjoy, so it's just those little things where it just really just fell into place and lined up. And,
Yeah.
when we're talking about the trust aspect and we talked about the intuition aspect and we talked about I did listen. I know we had been one of our last conversations, we had said if you take the left turn instead of the right turn that you always make, right, and just see what happens. And maybe it's not the best, it not that one way would take you to a bad thing, but maybe something really special would happen if you made the left turn, right? But that trusting in that, I fear, is very hard for people, and it really takes a conscious effort to switch the gear because we're so habitual. I'm very routine based. I love my routines, and I think that oftentimes, like they have, the image of the circle with, all the practice that you usually do, and then where the magic happens is a little dot out here.
Yes.
Very much that left turn goes to that dot outside of the circle of everything that you always do. And but you have to trust yourself to to make that leap. You have to trust yourself to follow, and you have to trust yourself to hear all of those things. And that's what we've been talking about with the intuition aspect. And that's why I said with the divine feminine and the fact that it's Friday the 13th. And, I know it's not as bright and shiny as, a wonderful afternoon cooking and baking and being in the hearth in the home, but a lot of the lack of trust comes from fear. And I think we have to talk about, like the dark side of the light, and the dark side of the light is fear. And when you come from a place of fear, stress, right, that anxiety that like lives in all of us, it's louder than the trust. It's louder than the intuition. It yells at you and it tells you you're wrong, and it's an inner criticism. And how much easier is it? How much do you? I know I fall victim to that all the time, but I think people really, a lot of times, the path of least resistance, unfortunately, is the path of fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yes, definitely, because it's almost like that's where we're programmed to go. That's
absolutely
where we're supposed to be, is on that path of, and I mean, I don't mean it in a bad way, but so many of us live in fear all the time, and that's what our life has been. And it is so beautiful when you step out of that matrix, out of that fear mode or fear programming, and go into where your heart space is and go inside yourself and hear what will make you happy and what will bring you joy, and just the little things. Just like yesterday, Minka and I were down by the creek taking a walk, and all at once it said, "Go over this way." And I thought, okay, I'll take a little different path. And what did I find but this tiny little beautiful white feather? And to
Oh,
me,
yay.
little white feathers are angels watching over you. And if I wouldn't have listened to that, I'd have never seen that beauty in that moment. Because right now, the leaves are all gone off the trees. And yet, to me, it's still beautiful because I know what the trees offer. They offer so much windbreak and it's still beautiful. But when you find something like that from just listening, and that's just something really small that came to my mind on how just trusting what your heart is telling you to do and going out of that programming habit that we so get into.
Absolutely. And, when you talk about exiting from the fear, and again, it comes from, we're programmed for, I know we are technically predators. We're programmed also as prey. Like that fear base was a survival instinct. It was literally Darwinian. It was to keep us safe. And as we evolved from, being chased by a saber-toothed tiger or whatever, I am I am not a paleontologist. So I don't know if we ever actually existed with saber-toothed tigers. So please forgive me if I'm way off on the arrows there. But it was that predator prey instinct to keep us safe, was to keep you living in fear, so that and especially I think even more so for women, because we were not the hunters, right? So
Yeah.
we have this extrasensory perception of protecting the young, right? And so we are, I think, even, and also let's face it, I mean, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but one of the designs, however you want to look at it, is women are essentially, safety is a huge concern for us. We are still nature's prey, and we are even nature's prey within our own species. We are still prey to men, unfortunately. It's a very true and albeit upsetting fact, but it is a true fact. And so I think for women, and I'm not going to say that men don't live in fear, like we all do, but for women, I think safety is a huge, huge, huge issue, a huge concern. And we live in fear. I mean, we live in fear walking down streets that men don't even think twice about, depending on where you live, right? I mean, it's inherent in us. And so to go from fear to trust, again, because fear is so loud. We've talked about how you have to quiet, creating that meditative space, creating that space within you to hear your intuition, to be able to trust and tap into it. That is one way to do it. But another aspect is to, if you've experienced a trauma, and if you are coming from a place of recovery from that, that is one of those times where, where I wanted to touch on this today, because you have to rebuild the trust in yourself, right? Because at some point, something in life, I don't care who you are. It could be a small thing. It could be a big thing. I hope for everybody that it's a small thing, but you're going to, your life, your persona, your personality is going to take you to a place where you're going to lose faith in your ability to trust your own perception, your own intuition, your own guidance system. And then what do you do? Right? Because at that point, now your core is shattered. Now what do you do? Right? And so one of the things that I wanted to touch on, and I think it's very important, is you have to rebuild. And you have to rebuild by starting so small and so incrementally. And really almost withdrawing to a place of a safe place for you, whatever that might be, internally, externally, in your home, but a safe place for you. And you have to rebuild step by step by step. And I think all of the ways that we've talked about your intuition, setting intentions, we've talked about all these things that are light, right? All these things of ways that, that they protect us, right? We talked about my snowmobile accident, or we talked about the time the deer jumped out of, and we got these warnings, right? That is a wonderful way to keep us safe. But what if we don't feel safe out of the gate? What if we walk through our lives not feeling safe? And how do we we bring ourselves back to that trust?
Something that comes to my mind when you talked about that trust being broken is I know what happens for men too, and I know what happens for women. A relationship where you felt the love, you felt this was true love, whether it be even in a family situation, sometimes you felt you could trust that person in your family and they betrayed you. Or you felt you had found the person that you were going to spend your life with and that didn't work out. So to me, I think about love too comes in there because so many times love is involved where the trust gets broken. And then to rebuild where you can say, okay, you blame yourself. I think a lot of times we put blame on ourselves. And it's not it's not all us. You you have to come to the realization that you're not the victim in this situation, be it with your family, be it with another mate, be it with whoever it was. You have to realize that you are not the victim and that it is universe maybe knew something more than you did, that this wasn't supposed to work out the way you thought it was going to. And then, like you said, it's those steps of rebuilding that trust to trust from the inside again, because it can get broken and it does get broken.
Absolutely. And it can be friendships.
Yes.
I've had it happen to me with multiple female friends, which
Mhm.
can be really upsetting. I've had it happen in romantic partnerships. I've
Mhm.
had it happen with family members. Everybody. And I will say that you're entirely right. It can't be even if you feel like a victim of it. And sometimes you may actually be a victim, right? That like
Yeah.
if you, I don't know, if someone steals your purse, you're a victim of
Yeah. Right.
of theft,
Right.
right? Like, so it can be that, but there's an element of, okay, it happened. And yeah, maybe for that moment I was a victim, but now that moment has passed and now I'm safe, right? So building that safe space, right? Like the purse is gone, the purse is stolen, and now I'm back home wherever my home is, and I'm calling to cancel all my credit cards. The moment has now passed. The person has now betrayed you, and now you know who they are. You see them for who they are. They're not going to do that again. So we're not going to allow them to do that again. And so while in the moment you may have been a victim to an unsavory character, no matter who that character is, overall, you now are empowered with that knowledge.
Mhm.
And that's where the rebuilding comes in. I've had conversations with friends who've gone through, traumatic breakups or losses of partners or whatever. And that is the thing. That is the thread. That is the shadow side of all this light work that we talk about, right? This is where this is where it gets real and ugly and sticky. But it's the most important part because this is where you need to climb out of that hole, of that victimhood, of that sadness, of that self-blame, of the internalization of your negative thought patterns, whether you feel like you missed it, you deserved it, and no one
Yeah.
does, right? Let me
Right.
just interject.
Right.
No one does. But there's always going to be, I should have seen it. I should have known. Should's a horrible word. I'm not the first person to say that. Should just be removed from the vocabulary, right? But you inherently come to a place, like you said, of self-blame.
Mhm.
And yeah, you know what? If a lot, 9 times out of 10, there's some element of personal responsibility. Maybe there was a sign. I know in relationships, I've seen signs, I ignored them, or I made excuses for the person.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, very rarely are you completely, it takes two in any relationship, romantic or otherwise. So very rarely are you without any responsibility to the situation. But that's where I wanted to touch on the steps to start to rebuild the trust in yourself. Because once the betrayal occurs, no matter what it is, it's not your relationship with that person that matters anymore. That's just, it is what it is, and hopefully
Mhm.
it's done. But
Mhm.
it's your relationship with yourself, and it's building the trust back in yourself to be able to protect yourself, to discern for yourself. And that discernment is where the intuition, trust your intuition, tap into your intuition, where that comes into play. Because you have to, if you don't trust yourself, you cannot trust your intuition. right? Your intuition or yourself, like let's call it the higher self. If you don't want to call it spirit, source, God, whatever, let's call it your higher self. If you refuse to listen to that, or if you fear listening to that, or if God forbid you thought that is what guided you to that person that harmed you, that's a huge, huge one for a lot of people, myself included, where, like you said, you thought that person was the one. You thought you were trusting in your intuition, and you thought you were trusting in your divine guidance. And then, right, the sheepskin comes off and there's the wolf, right? And then, wow, were you wrong? Wow, were you wrong? And so one of the things that I like to talk to people about when it comes to this kind of trauma, because I know, again, we're running short on time again. But draw in, make everything smaller, take everything inside and bring yourself back. Bring yourself back to yourself. Start to create a completely safe space in self-care. Start to create a completely safe space, if you can, hopefully in your own home, in your own place. Start to limit your interactions with people for a short period of time. I'm not telling you to crawl into a hole and, never come out, because isolation is not good. But, the idea being that if you don't trust yourself and you go out and you start making poor decisions because you are inherently, not okay with yourself, a lot of times this is where people can spiral into acting out in ways that does not serve them. So instead of that, try to make the choices to heal, make the choices to sit with the pain, which is really hard, especially right now around the holidays. It's really hard. And I hope everyone has a wonderful holiday season and that this is not occurring at that time, but you have to sit with it. You have to there's only one way, and it's not around, it's through, right? So if you can soberly, with the help of a therapist, a life coach, a friend, a trusted friend, right? Sit with it and process it and draw in and just be with it. That's how you reconnect to yourself.
And that's how, with yourself, you're going to be able to then tap into your intuition.
Yes.
Does that, do you have experience with that? Does that make sense for you?
Yeah, that makes total sense, because the first thing that comes to my mind, my way to reconnect is to get out in nature and be with my animals, because my horses, my dog are always holding space for me, and they know me better than any human ever will. That's just who I am. My animals know me completely, and I can go to them and I can start to rebuild and start to heal. And they are there to help me do that, because they are holding the space and they understand. But that's just me personal. I'm not saying that's the right way to do it. That's just how I heal. And yes, you have to take that time, however it may be, that you heal. Find that way. Find how you can go inside yourself and heal those wounds that are inside of you, rather than just keep burying them and saying, oh, it doesn't matter, I'll just keep on going. No, to me, you have to deal with it. You have to go through it, like you said, and you have to heal. And finding that way to heal, it's beautiful when you get through it. It's tough, but it's beautiful when you get through it.
And I'm so glad that you said that about the animals, because, you and I are very blessed to have horses in our lives, and just, there's science behind it. Just being in a horse's energy field, in their heart energetic field, it's huge. We've had this discussion before. Their literal auric fields are massive because they're flight animals, and just standing next to a horse raises your vibration, brings you up, heals you. It's a true statement. And dogs are the same way. If there's something wrong, there is no place I prefer to be than on my couch between both of my dogs, or walking them out in nature if they're behaving themselves. Sometimes they don't always behave themselves. So it can be a little stressful. But that, you know, you and I are both blessed, and we have those animals in our lives. Not everyone has access to horses certainly, and some people have cats, not dogs, and cats are
Right.
lovely healing animals, right? So animal healing is a huge part of it. And the one thing that I love about dogs, horses, cats, etc., is the complicated relationships that we have with humans. We don't have those with animals.
Mm-mm. No.
Dogs are our loyal protectors,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Horses are our healers.
Mm-hmm.
Cats are our energetic protectors. I mean, you could go on a whole rabbit hole on cats and their energy and just their
Yes.
history, you know what I mean? So, I mean, that's again, we always lead to what will come next.
I agree.
But you know, it's so important, like you said, to take the time and to heal. But I think one of the things that, if I can leave us with anything, when you lose trust in yourself to take care of yourself, because right at the end of the day, as once we are adults, right, once we are no longer children, we have to take care of ourselves. There's not going to be someone holding our hand through our lives. It doesn't work that way, except for, you know, depending on what you believe in. We're always protected, but you have to be able to trust yourself. And when that trust is broken, I think that is harder to rebuild than any relationship. That is a shattering of the self. And like I said, this is the dark side to all the light and happy, you know, manifesting your life and all of, like, this is where it gets real, because no one doesn't have a story about betrayal. Or if you do, bless your heart. And I mean that not in the passive aggressive way. I actually mean it, right? And so I think that, like, you use the word heal, and I love that word, but I also think that you need to meet your inner, and I don't want this to come across as, again, like that masculine energy, that fight energy, but you need to meet your inner protector.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think for some people, I'm going to kind of leave like a little cliffhanging note here, but I think for some people, it might help when you come into that space to actually visualize, if you're going through the intuition, tapping into, tuning into, trusting. You can create, if you feel like you've broken it, you can create it within yourself.
Yes.
So you might need to give it, it could be, like, for me, one of the things that's come through for me is a dog.
Mm-hmm.
You can have an inner protector.
Yeah.
And creating that relationship by actually beginning to visualize it and assigning roles to it, and taking the time, like you said, to heal yourself, but also taking the time to say, okay, well, this didn't work. You have to do something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, how beautiful. Oh, Gia, this has gone so quickly. I really think we could almost do a part two. And as you started in with the animals, we could do a whole nother part on the learning to trust through the animals. And yeah, there's so many options here. So with that, a couple things. I would love to have you back again so you and I can continue on whatever path the universe leads us on the next show.
Absolutely. I think we'd have an idea which direction we're going to walk down, and I'd love to walk down it with you.
Yeah. Oh, and I'd love to with you too. So, it's definitely going to happen in 2025. I love it.
Absolutely.
And with that, would you please share with the listeners the best ways to connect with you?
Yes, thank you so much. So, at Airs Above Yoga on the interwebs, and of course, at Airs Above Yoga on all social media, and that's AIRSABOVEYOGA. It's a play on Airs Above the Ground, which is a dressage term. And like I said, I do distance Reiki and Zoom yoga for people who may not be in the tri-state area. But please do feel free to reach out, and I'd love to help anyone on their healing journey, for them or for their four-legged friends who, let's face it, heal us every day.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gia. And I want to wish you just magical holidays through this month of December until we connect again in January.
Thank you so much. Likewise, I hope you have the most wonderful and beautiful holiday season, and may it just bless all of us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And with that, I want to thank all of our listeners for listening to this magical show with our amazing diva, Gia-RaquelGia-Raquel. Please share this show with your family and friends. Check out all the other hosts and their shows on divasthatcare.com. And remember some of the tidbits that she left with us. That number 13 is a powerful feminine energy. So when someone says something negative, just go in your mind. It's a powerful feminine energy number. And create versus consume. And bring yourself back to learn to trust yourself. And take that time to heal on whatever way fits you the best. Gia and I just gave you some of the tips that help us to heal through different things. So with that, I want to wish all of you a very, very magical day. Remember, be kind to all, including your animals. Give your animals a great big extra hug and share all your love with them. Until we connect again on Robust Lifestyles, stay strong and healthy.
Thanks for listening. This show was brought to you by Divas That Care. Connect with us on Facebook, on Instagram, and of course on divasthatcare.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss a thing.